Okay, so are you ready to dive into something a little bit sneaky, a concept that's maybe a little bit brilliant and a little bit dangerous?
Always up for a
All
challenge.
right, good, good. So today we're going to unpack how to gain an advantage by kind of stirring up chaos for everyone else while you stay completely calm yourself.
Oh, yeah, this is a good one.
Right. It's like one of those classic tactics.
This is a tactic that's been used effectively for centuries,
Mhm.
often in like war and politics, but, it can be applied to so many areas of life.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like that scene in an action movie where the hero like sets off a diversion so they can slip away unnoticed.
Yeah,
Except in this case, we're not just trying to escape, we're trying to take control, right?
exactly. Yeah.
And the source material for our deep dive today is Law 39, Stir Up Waters to Catch Fish, from the book The 48 Laws of Power. So I'm really excited to kind of dig into this.
Sounds good.
So help me understand this. How does causing chaos actually give someone an advantage?
Well, think about it this way. When people are emotional, they become predictable,
Ah,
react instead of like thinking strategically.
right.
And that's when you can kind of swoop in and make your move.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, so it's not just about creating chaos for the sake of it. It's about using those predictable reactions to your advantage.
Exactly. And, this law actually highlights a quote from Sun Tzu's The Art of War.
Oh, okay.
It says, if your opponent is secure at all points, be prepared for him. If he is in superior strength, evade him. If he is temperamental, seek to irritate him.
Hmm.
So stirring up the waters is about understanding someone's weaknesses and emotional triggers and then, well, pushing those buttons.
Isn't that, I don't know, a little bit manipulative?
It certainly can be.
Yeah.
But remember, every interaction involves a degree of influence.
Mm-hmm.
The key is to be aware of these tactics, whether you choose to use them or to simply protect yourself from them.
Okay, so it's like a double-edged sword. You could use this knowledge to outmaneuver someone, or you could use it to recognize when someone's trying to outmaneuver you.
Precisely. It's all about awareness and strategic thinking.
Okay, so where do we see this happening in the real world? I feel like this is happening everywhere I look.
Yeah.
I mean, the book mentions politics, which seems like an obvious example.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Think about those seemingly minor scandals or
Oh,
controversies
yeah.
that can completely dominate the news cycle for like days, sometimes even weeks.
I see it all the time. It feels like a shiny object that distracts us from the bigger picture. Is that what's happening here?
Often, yes. This is a classic example of stirring the waters. Politicians or anyone in a position of power might use these distractions to divert attention from something they don't want us to focus on.
So it's like a magician's sleight of hand,
Yes,
creating a distraction while they pull off the real trick.
a perfect analogy.
Ah,
And it's not just limited to politics. We see this tactic being used in the business world as well.
yeah.
Like, companies might intentionally release confusing information or create a sense of scarcity.
To make their competitors look bad.
Exactly.
Oh.
It's about creating an environment where their own brand or product appears as the stable, reliable option.
And of course, this all plays out in like the media and public relations as well. Celebrities facing scandals seem, I don't know, it's like clockwork almost.
Yeah, right.
There's always a new controversy conveniently popping up.
It's almost like a playbook.
Yeah.
They might leak information themselves or create a news story to control the narrative and shift the public's focus.
So it's not just about deflecting attention, it's about actually like controlling where that attention goes.
Exactly. It's about regaining control of the narrative and manipulating public perception. Now, the excerpts also highlight a fascinating historical example, the rivalry between Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla.
Oh, yeah. I know about these guys. Okay. Edison invented the light bulb, and Tesla, well, he was kind of a mad scientist genius, right?
That's one way to put it. Yeah. Tesla was a brilliant inventor, and his alternating current, or AC system, was actually superior to Edison's direct current DC system. But Edison, feeling threatened, decided to fight back by, well, stirring the waters.
What do you mean?
He knew that people were afraid of electricity, so he staged these very public demonstrations where he used AC current to electrocute animals.
He electrocuted animals, seriously.
Yeah, he even electrocuted an elephant.
Wow, that's intense.
His goal was to associate AC electricity with danger, to make people afraid of Tesla's technology. It was
Yeah.
a blatant emotional manipulation tactic.
And it worked.
To some degree, yes.
Yeah.
It certainly created a lot of negative publicity around AC and, slowed down its adoption. But in the long run, as we know, Tesla's AC system prevailed.
So even though this tactic can be effective in the short term, it doesn't always guarantee long-term success.
Exactly. It's a high-risk, high-reward strategy. You have to be very careful.
It's like playing with fire. You could get burned. Speaking of which, the excerpt mentions the downfall of Saddam Hussein as a cautionary tale. Didn't he use these tactics as well?
He did. He was notorious for pitting his rivals against each other,
Yeah.
keeping them in a constant state of conflict. He thrived on chaos. But when external forces got involved, that internal chaos weakened his regime and contributed to his downfall.
So it's not enough to just create chaos. You have to be able to control it.
Precisely.
Okay.
The goal isn't to burn everything down. It's to strategically shift the balance of power in your favor.
And if you lose control of that chaos, it can come back to bite you.
Exactly. So the key takeaway here is that stirring the waters can be a powerful tool, but it's important to use it strategically and ethically because, like we said before, it can backfire spectacularly.
Okay, this is all fascinating, but I think what our listeners really want to know is how can we apply this Law 39 in our own lives without, resorting to electrocuting any elephants?
Of course. That's what we'll explore next.
All right, so we've talked about the historical and the political side of stirring the waters, but I'm curious how this plays out in a more, everyday setting. The book mentions Burger King's marketing strategy.
Oh, yeah.
Which seems like a good example of this.
Yeah, Burger King is, they're a master at using this tactic.
Really?
They're constantly poking at their rivals, especially McDonald's, with these, playful, often controversial campaigns.
I've definitely seen some of those, yeah. It always gets people talking, debating, even arguing online.
Right.
But how does that actually benefit them? I mean, isn't that just creating drama for the sake of drama?
Well, on the surface, it might look that way. But there's a deeper strategy at play here.
Okay.
By creating these viral controversies, Burger King manages to generate a ton of free publicity.
I see.
For both brands.
So even though they're targeting McDonald's, it ends up putting both brands in the spotlight.
Exactly. It's like they're hijacking the conversation and turning it into a win-win.
Yeah.
And more importantly, Burger King positions themselves as the bold, the edgy alternative to the more traditional McDonald's.
So it's not just about getting attention, it's about shaping the narrative around their brand.
Precisely. They're not just stirring the waters, they're controlling the current. And let's be honest, it works.
Yeah.
They're constantly in the headlines and people are talking about them.
Yeah, it's almost like they're hacking the algorithm of our attention.
You could say that. In the digital age, controversy sells. And Burger King understands this better than most. But what's interesting here is the psychology behind why it works.
Okay, I'm listening. What's the psychology?
So think about it. When we see something controversial, we're naturally curious. We want to know more. We want to form an opinion. And often, controversy makes a brand seem more authentic, more real.
So by being a little bit edgy, a little bit controversial, they're actually coming across as more genuine.
It's counterintuitive, but yeah, it's true. People are drawn to brands that aren't afraid to take risks, to stand out from the crowd.
This is giving me a whole new perspective on marketing. Okay, so we've seen how powerful this tactic can be in politics, in business, even in the world of fast food. But what about for the rest of us? How can we apply this Law 39, in our own lives?
Well, remember, the key to successfully applying this law is not about creating outright chaos. It's about maintaining emotional control while others lose theirs. That in itself can create subtle shifts in the power dynamic.
So it's not about being manipulative, it's about being strategic.
Exactly. Think of it this way. Imagine you're in a tense meeting at work.
Okay.
And someone is pushing for a decision you don't agree with. Instead of getting into a heated argument, what if you subtly shifted the conversation?
How would you do that?
You could introduce a new piece of information, something that makes everyone pause and reconsider. Or perhaps you ask a question that makes them doubt their own assumption.
So you're not directly challenging them, but you're creating a moment of doubt, a little bit of confusion that gives you some breathing room?
Precisely. You've stirred the waters just enough to shift the momentum.
Okay.
Or let's say you're trying to negotiate a better deal on something. Instead of being confrontational, you could express doubt about your own ability to afford it, even if you can.
So you're playing on their emotions.
Yeah.
Their desire to close the deal by making them think they might lose you as a customer.
Exactly. You've created a sense of urgency,
Mhm.
a little bit of fear that they might miss out without ever explicitly saying it.
Hmm. I never thought about it that way, but
Yeah.
it makes so much sense.
It's all about understanding those subtle dynamics of power and influence.
This is really making me think about my own interactions in a new light. I can see how I've been on both sides of this dynamic.
We all have. The key is to be aware of it so we can make conscious choices about how we want to navigate these situations.
Okay, so in a nutshell, the takeaway here is to stay calm, observe the emotional landscape, and then find subtle ways to shift the conversation in your favor.
You got it. Remember, Law 39 is not about being a manipulative mastermind. It's about understanding the subtle art of influence.
All right, I'm starting to feel like I've got a handle on this, but before we get too carried away with our newfound powers of persuasion, I think it's time to bring this back to our listeners and leave them with something to think about. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Law 39, stir up waters to catch fish, let's kind of turn the focus to you, the listener. Have you ever, encountered someone who just seems to effortlessly control the room? You know what I mean? Someone who can always get their way without ever raising their voice.
Chances are, yeah, they were masters of this very tactic. They understood the power of emotions, and more importantly, they knew how to use them to their advantage.
Hmm. That's a little bit intimidating, to be honest. It makes you realize how easily we can be influenced, even manipulated, if we're not paying attention.
It's true, but knowledge is power, as they say. By understanding these tactics, we can protect ourselves from being manipulated, and perhaps even use them strategically ourselves.
Okay, so what you're saying is we should all be paying attention to the emotional, I don't know, undercurrents in our interactions, whether it's at work, in our relationships, or even just out in the world.
Absolutely. Observe how people react to certain topics or situations.
Yeah.
What are their triggers? What makes them emotional? Once you understand those things, you have a better understanding of how to navigate those interactions.
This is starting to feel like a superpower. Like if you can read people's emotions, you can basically predict their actions.
In a way, yeah. But remember, with great power comes great responsibility. It's important to use this knowledge ethically.
Right, we're not advocating for manipulation or deceit. It's more about being aware, being strategic, and using those insights to create win-win situations.
Exactly. It's about understanding the dynamics of influence and using that understanding to navigate the complexities of life more effectively.
So to wrap this all up, what's the one key takeaway? What do you want our listeners to walk away with today?
True power lies in controlling your own emotions, not being controlled by them. Observe, plan, and act strategically. Don't let your emotions get the better of you.
I love that. It's a reminder that even in the midst of chaos, we always have a choice. We can either react emotionally or we can choose to stay calm and in control.
And that choice can make all the difference.
Well said. Thank you so much for guiding us through this fascinating deep dive. I know I've learned a lot today.
The pleasure was all mine. It's always a fascinating journey to explore these timeless laws of power.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this exploration of Law 39, Stir Up Waters to Catch Fish. Remember, knowledge is power. Use it wisely. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the fascinating world of strategy and human behavior.